The fluorescent lights of the office parking garage hummed, a sound I usually tuned out, but tonight felt like a drill boring into my skull. It was nearly 9 p.m., way past the time Diana usually got home from the marketing firm where she'd worked for the past 5 years. I wasn't normally the type to wait outside someone's workplace, but the knot in my stomach, tight and cold for weeks now, had finally driven me here. It wasn't just the late nights. It was the shift in her, subtle at first, like a change in barometric pressure before a storm. It was the way she started guarding her phone, the vague answers about team dinners that somehow never included names I recognized, the faint, almost imperceptible scent of a cologne that wasn't mine clinging to her scarf one evening. I told myself it was stress. Her firm had landed a huge new client, a tech giant launching a global campaign. The pressure was immense, she'd said, pulling away when I tried to rub the tension from her shoulders. "It's just work, Mark," she'd murmured, her voice distant even when she was right beside me. I'd tried to believe her. For 15 years, Diana had been my rock, the steady center of my world. We'd built a life, a comfortable home, raised 2 kids who were now navigating their own teenage dramas. We were supposed to be the solid ones, the couple everyone else pointed to as proof that long-term love worked. But the name kept cropping up in her stories, always casually, almost too casually. Derek, the new project lead, brought in from the London office. Brilliant, apparently, driven, full of innovative ideas. At first it was just professional admiration. Derek suggested this amazing new angle, or Derek really knows how to motivate the team. Then it became more personal. Inside jokes I wasn't privy to, mentioned with a quick smile she seemed unable to suppress. Lunch meetings that stretched longer, texts that made her laugh softly before she quickly tapped out a reply, her screen angled away. I hated the suspicion creeping into my thoughts, turning me into someone I didn't recognize. I started checking the time compulsively when she was late, my mind inventing scenarios I immediately tried to banish. I'd look at her across the dinner table, searching her face for clues, for the woman I knew, but sometimes she seemed like a stranger, preoccupied, her mind miles away. "Everything okay?" I'd ask. "Fine. Just tired," she'd reply, the answer becoming a familiar, unsatisfying refrain. Tonight felt different. She'd called around 6, her voice rushed. "Hey, slammed here. Derek and I are just finalizing the presentation deck. Probably won't be home till late." Something in her tone, a forced brightness, set my teeth on edge. It wasn't the words, it was the delivery. Practiced. So here I sat, engine off, the car cooling in the concrete cavern, watching the elevators. I didn't know what I expected to find. Maybe just see her walk out alone, looking exhausted, confirming my fears were just paranoia. Maybe confront her, demand answers, or maybe, deep down, I just needed to see whatever it was I was afraid of, to stop living with the gnawing uncertainty. The elevator doors slid open. My breath caught. It was Diana, laughing, her head tilted back slightly. Beside her, tall and wearing a well-cut suit even at this hour, was Derek. His hand was resting on the small of her back, not aggressively, not improperly, in a purely objective sense, but possessively, comfortably. It was the kind of casual touch that spoke volumes, a gesture reserved for intimacy, not finalizing a presentation deck. As they walked toward his car, parked just a few spaces down from where I sat, shrouded in the garage's gloom, he leaned down and murmured something in her ear. She swatted his arm playfully, a gesture so familiar, so us, that it felt like a physical blow. They didn't kiss. They didn't embrace. But the way they moved together, the shared energy, the private bubble they inhabited, it screamed a truth my gut had known for weeks. They got into his car, a sleek silver sedan, and pulled out of the garage, leaving me sitting there, the hum of the lights suddenly deafening, the knot in my stomach twisting into searing pain. I hadn't seen proof, not in the legal sense, but I had seen enough. The foundation I thought was rock solid had just fractured beneath me. My hands clenched the steering wheel, the plastic groaning under the pressure. My knuckles were white, mirroring the pale shock I felt washing over me. It wasn't a single shattering moment like seeing them kiss. It was worse. It was the casual intimacy, the unspoken understanding between them, the easy way his hand rested on her back as if it belonged there. It was the normalcy of it all that felt like acid in my gut. This wasn't a drunken mistake or a fleeting lapse in judgment. This was practiced. This was their routine. I don't know how long I sat there after they drove off. Seconds? Minutes? The garage seemed to press in on me, the air thick and smelling of exhaust fumes and damp concrete. Finally, a tremor started in my hands, spreading up my arms. I fumbled for the keys, my fingers clumsy, and jammed the key into the ignition. The engine turning over sounded unnaturally loud in the quiet space. The drive home was a blur of red taillights and street lamps smearing across my vision. My mind was a chaotic slideshow. Diana laughing with Derek, her playful swat on his arm, the way she angled her phone away from me, the late nights, the vague excuses, the faint scent of that other cologne. Each memory clicked into place, forming a sickening mosaic of deceit. How long had this been going on? Since Derek arrived? Before? Was the huge new client project just a convenient cover story, an elaborate stage for their affair? My chest felt tight, like a band constricting around my ribs. I had to force myself to breathe evenly. 15 years. We'd weathered job losses, family illnesses, the turbulent teenage years of our kids. We were supposed to be a team. I remembered standing with her in the empty shell of our house before we bought it, tracing patterns on the dusty floor, talking about filling it with life, with memories. "Forever, right?" she had whispered, leaning her head on my shoulder. I'd believed it then, implicitly. Now that memory felt like a shard of glass twisting inside me. When I pulled into our driveway, the house looked dark except for the porch light I always left on for her. Our home. It suddenly felt alien, like a stage set for a play I no longer had a part in. I cut the engine and sat in the silence, the ticking of the cooling engine the only sound. What now? Storm inside? Wait for her? Pack a bag? The questions swirled, unanswered, useless. I walked through the front door into the quiet house. The faint scent of lemon polish from the cleaning service earlier that day hung in the air, overlaid with the familiar smell of home, old books, brewing coffee, us. I walked into the living room, the photos on the mantelpiece catching my eye. Us on our wedding day, beaming, impossibly young. The kids as toddlers, gap-toothed and grinning. Family vacations, birthdays, ordinary moments captured in glossy squares. It all felt like a lie now, a carefully curated exhibit of a life that didn't match the reality I'd just glimpsed. I sank onto the couch, the familiar cushions offering no comfort. Anger began to bubble beneath the shock, hot and acrid. How could she? How could she stand beside me at our daughter's school play last week, holding my hand, whispering commentary, knowing she was living this double life? How could she look me in the eye every morning? The sheer audacity of it, the sustained deception, felt staggering. Part of me wanted to smash something, to vent the rage coiling inside. Another part just felt hollowed out, exhausted by the weeks of suspicion that had now solidified into harsh certainty. I thought about waking the kids, telling them, what? That their mother wasn't the person they thought she was? That our family was built on a lie? No, I couldn't do that. Not yet. This was between Diana and me. I glanced at the clock on the cable box. 10:15 p.m. She'd be home soon. Would she come straight here? Would Derek drop her off down the street? Would she walk in smelling faintly of his car, of him? My mind conjured the image of her rehearsing her story on the way home, the late-night work session, the challenges of the presentation, the exhaustion. Would she feign normalcy, kiss me lightly, murmur about needing sleep? A wave of nausea rolled over me. I stood up, pacing the length of the living room, needing to move, to do something other than just sit and wait for the inevitable confrontation. I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the tension in my scalp, in my neck. I stopped in front of the hallway mirror, staring at my reflection. My face looked pale, strained, older than it had this morning. The man staring back looked like a fool. Then I heard it, the sound of a car pulling up outside, not into the driveway, but idling down the street. Headlights swept across the living room curtains, briefly illuminating the photos on the mantelpiece before disappearing. A car door opened and closed softly. Footsteps on the pavement, hesitant at first, then quickening as they approached the porch. The rattle of keys, the lock turning, the front door opened. Diana stepped inside, pulling the door closed quietly behind her. She didn't see me at first, standing in the shadows of the living room entrance. She dropped her keys into the ceramic bowl on the hall table, the clatter echoing slightly in the stillness. She sighed, a weary sound, and ran a hand through her hair, pushing it back from her face. She looked tired, yes, but there was something else too, a residual energy, a faint flush on her cheeks that wasn't just from the cool night air. "Mark," she called out softly, assuming I was upstairs. "You still up?" I didn't answer immediately. I watched her shrug off her coat, hang it on the hook. There it was, faint but unmistakable, the subtle woody scent of the cologne I'd noticed before. It wasn't strong, not like she'd been embraced moments ago, but it lingered, a phantom presence in our home, my home. I stepped out of the shadows. She startled, her hand flying to her chest. "Mark, you scared me. I didn't see you there." A nervous laugh followed, a little too high-pitched. "Long night. That presentation is finally done, thank goodness. Derek is a machine, but we nailed it." She started walking towards the kitchen, already slipping into the practice script. "I'm starving. Barely had time for dinner. Did you eat?" I stayed where I was, leaning against the doorframe, my arms crossed. My silence seemed to finally register. She stopped mid-stride, halfway between the hall and the kitchen, and turned back to look at me properly. Her smile faltered, confusion clouding her eyes. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice losing its forced brightness, replaced by a note of caution. "You look pale? Are the kids okay?" "The kids are fine," I said. My voice sounded flat, devoid of emotion, even to my own ears. It felt detached, like I was watching this scene unfold from a distance. She took a step towards me, her brow furrowed with concern. or a very good imitation of it. Then what is it? You're acting strange. I just looked at her, looked at the woman I had loved for half my life, the mother of my children, the person I thought I knew better than anyone, and all I could see were the cracks, the hidden compartments, the carefully constructed facade. The image of her laughing with him in the garage, his hand on her back, superimposed itself over the concerned face she wore now. "Where were you tonight, Diana?" I asked, the question hanging heavy in the air between us. She blinked, caught off guard. "I told you, at the office, finishing the presentation with Derek. It went late." She recited the lines perfectly, but her eyes darted away for a fraction of a second. "The office parking garage was nearly empty when I was there," I stated, keeping my voice level. Her breath hitched, color drained from her face, leaving her looking suddenly fragile, exposed. You were at the office?" "Waited for you," I confirmed. "Saw you leave." Her eyes widened, flickers of panic starting to show. "Mark, She trailed off, searching for words, for an explanation that could possibly fit. "Saw you leave with Derek," I continued, pressing forward, the numbness beginning to recede, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. "Saw him put his hand on your back. Saw you get into his car." She flinched, as if each word were a physical strike. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken admissions, with the weight of years of lies, small and large, that had led to this moment. Her carefully constructed world was crumbling around her, and she had nowhere to hide. "It's not," she began, her voice trembling now, losing its conviction. "It's not what it looks like." The classic line, the first refuge of the caught. It almost made me laugh, a bitter, humorless sound that died in my throat. "Then what is it, Diana?" I asked, stepping away from the doorframe, moving closer towards her. "What is it?" Because from where I was sitting, it looked exactly like my wife getting into a car with the man she's been lying to me about for months. Tears welled in her eyes, shimmering under the hallway light. Not tears of remorse, I suspected, but tears of fear, of being cornered. "Mark, please." "Please what?" I interrupted, the anger finally starting to surface, hot and sharp. "Please pretend I didn't see what I saw. Please let you keep lying to me, to our family. Please just go back to how things were." I shook my head slowly. "I don't think we can." She stood frozen, tears tracing paths down her cheeks. The scent of his cologne seemed stronger now, an indictment hanging in the air between us. The life we had built together felt like a fragile thing, shattered into pieces at my feet. I looked at her, at the tears, at the fear, and felt a profound sense of loss, deeper than the anger, colder than the betrayal. The woman I married, the life I thought I had, it was gone. This silence felt heavier than any argument. "Mark, it was complicated," Diana stammered, wiping furiously at her tears with the back of her hand. The movement seemed automatic, a nervous habit rather than genuine distress. "The project, it's been incredibly intense. We spent so much time together, late nights, weekends. Things just—" She gestured vaguely, unable to articulate the betrayal into something justifiable. "It got confusing." "Confusing?" I repeated the word, letting it hang there. It sounded flimsy, inadequate. "Confusing is when you can't remember where you parked your car, Diana. Confusing isn't betraying 15 years of marriage, sneaking around behind my back, lying to my face every single day. The cold anger was a solid weight in my chest now, anchoring me. How long? She flinched again, looking down at her hands. Mark. How long? I insisted, my voice harder now. I needed to know. The uncertainty was another layer of torment. She hesitated, biting her lip. Finally she whispered, so low I could barely hear it, a few months since Derek started. Months, not a one-off mistake fueled by stress and proximity, but a sustained campaign of deception. Months of shared jokes I wasn't part of, late-night texts, lunches that stretched into something else. Months of her coming home smelling faintly of him, of her pulling away from my touch, citing tiredness. Each lie, each evasion now felt like a deliberate twist of the knife. And the money. The thought surfaced suddenly, cold and sharp. I hadn't connected it before, but the way she'd been cagey about some recent credit card statements, the unexpected work expenses, had it gone further than just an affair? The memory of her asking about refinancing the house a couple of weeks ago, citing lower interest rates, took on a sinister new light. Was Derek part of that confusion too? Planning something? The thought made me feel sick, but I pushed it down, one betrayal at a time. That was enough for tonight. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her eyes widening slightly, a flicker of a different kind of fear entering them. "Never mind," I said curtly, waving it away. It didn't matter now, not the details. The core truth was enough. "So, all those times you said you were working late, the team dinners, the weekend strategy sessions, that was all just—" "Some of it was work," she insisted, a flash of defensiveness rising. It wasn't like that all the time. Mark, we were under so much pressure. He understood." "He understood," I echoed flatly. "And I didn't?" The implication stung, adding insult to the injury. The man you built a life with, raised children with, the one who supported your career, who trusted you implicitly, I didn't understand. But the guy you've known for a few months, he gets it. "That's not what I meant," she backtracked quickly, seeing her mistake. "It's just, it was different." "Yes," I agreed, the word like ice. It was. I looked past her, towards the darkened kitchen, towards the stairs leading up to where our children slept, oblivious to the earthquake happening below them. Their lives, their sense of security, were tangled up in this mess she had created. The weight of that settled on me heavily. "You need to leave, Diana," I said, the words coming out quiet but absolute. There was no other option, not tonight. I couldn't breathe the same air as her right now, couldn't stand under the same roof, knowing what I knew, smelling his scent on her coat. Her head snapped up, genuine shock finally breaking through the fear and defensiveness. "What? Mark, no! Where would I go? It's late." "I don't know," I said, and the honest truth was, I didn't care. "Go to a hotel. Go to his place. Figure it out. But you can't stay here tonight." "Mark, please don't do this," she pleaded, taking a step towards me again, her hands outstretched. "We can talk about this. We can fix this. Think about the kids." "I am thinking about the kids," I shot back, my voice finally rising, raw with pain. "I'm thinking about how I'm going to explain this to them. I'm thinking about how everything they believed about their family, about us, is a lie because of what you did." I stopped, forcing myself to take a deep breath, lowering my voice again. The rage wouldn't help. "There's nothing to talk about right now, Diana. Not tonight. The trust is gone, completely shattered, and I don't know if it can ever be rebuilt." Her face crumpled, the fight seeming to drain out of her. She sank onto the bottom step of the staircase, burying her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. They weren't the panicked tears from before. These sounded deeper, wrenched from somewhere closer to despair. Part of me, the man who had loved her for so long, felt a flicker of something. Pity, maybe, or just the ghost of old affection. But it was overwhelmed by the vast, aching emptiness the betrayal had carved inside me. Seeing her cry didn't change anything. It didn't undo the months of lies, the image of her with him, the scent of his cologne in our home. I stood there for a long moment, watching her, the silence broken only by her muffled sobs. The house felt suffocating. I needed air. I needed space. I turned away from her, walking towards the back door that led out to the patio. "I need you to be gone when I get back," I said, my voice flat, final. I didn't look back to see her reaction. I pulled open the door and stepped out into the cool night air. The darkness felt like a relief, a stark contrast to the fluorescent brightness of the garage and the suffocating intimacy of the house. The scent of damp earth and cut grass filled my lungs. I walked across the lawn, the wet blades soaking through my socks inside my shoes, but I barely noticed. I reached the old oak tree at the edge of the yard, the one the kids used to climb, and leaned my forehead against its rough bark. The wood felt cool, solid, real, unchanging, unlike everything else. The future stretched before me, a vast unknown territory shrouded in fog. 15 years, gone, just like that. What was left? Fragments, memories now tainted, 2 children whose world was about to be upended, and me, standing alone in the dark, under a silent tree, the ground unsteady beneath my feet. I closed my eyes, listening to the frantic beat of my own heart. The first step was telling her to leave. The next steps, I couldn't even comprehend them yet. All I felt was the cold, the quiet, and the overwhelming sense of being utterly adrift. The silence from the house was absolute. The rough bark of the oak felt grounding against my forehead, a small point of stability in a world that had tilted off its axis. The night air was sharp, carrying the scent of impending rain. How had we gotten here? 15 years of shared history, jokes, struggles, triumphs, reduced to this sordid, commonplace betrayal. I thought of our kids asleep upstairs, blissfully unaware. How could I protect them from this? The weight of it felt immense, crushing. My son's soccer game on Saturday, my daughter's upcoming birthday. How were we supposed to navigate these simple family moments now, pretending everything was normal when the foundation had crumbled? The anger still simmered, but underneath it was a vast, hollow ache. It wasn't just the infidelity, it was the calculated deception, the months of looking me in the eye while living another life, the casual ease with which she operated in that garage tonight, alongside him. It spoke of practice, of comfort in the deceit. That hurt almost more than the act itself. The cold began to seep into my bones, reminding me I couldn't stand out here forever. I straightened up, rubbing my arms. Whatever came next, I had to face it. Staying out here wouldn't change the reality waiting inside the house. I turned and walked slowly back across the damp grass, my footsteps heavy. The porch light cast long, distorted shadows. My hand hesitated on the doorknob. What would I find? Would she still be there, crying on the stairs? Would she have packed a bag? Would she try to argue again? I braced myself, turned the knob, and pushed the door open. Silence. A profound, echoing silence that was different from the quiet stillness of a sleeping house. I stepped into the hall. Her coat was gone from the hook. The ceramic bowl on the hall table was empty. Her keys weren't there. She had left. Just like that. No further argument, no final desperate plea, no scene. She was gone. The speed of her departure felt like another confirmation. She had somewhere to go. Someone waiting. The thought sent a fresh wave of coldness through me. It hadn't been a difficult choice for her, apparently. Just pack and leave. I closed the door softly, the click of the latch sounding unnaturally loud in the stillness. The house felt instantly larger, emptier. The air seemed thinner. I walked into the living room, the place where we'd spent countless evenings, watching movies, helping with homework, just existing together. The photos on the mantelpiece seemed to mock me now. My eyes landed on a smaller frame tucked near the back, a picture of just Diana and me, taken maybe 5 years ago on a trip to the coast. We were standing on a cliff overlooking the ocean, wind-blown and laughing, squinting against the sun. Her arm was looped through mine, her head tilted against my shoulder. We looked happy, uncomplicated, real. I picked up the frame, my thumb automatically tracing the curve of her smiling face behind the cool glass. Who was that woman? Had she already been carrying secrets then, or was this before the fault lines began to appear? Could I even trust my own memories anymore? Everything felt tainted, rewritten by the knowledge of her betrayal. The woman in the photo felt like a ghost, someone I used to know intimately, but could no longer reach, no longer recognize. The disconnect between that image and the woman who had walked out the door minutes ago, carrying the scent of another man, was a chasm I couldn't bridge. I set the frame back down, my fingers trembling slightly. The silence of the house pressed in, heavy and absolute. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it was the absence of her, the absence of the life I thought we had, utterly empty. I stood there in the hollow silence, the air tasting like dust and absence. She was really gone. It happened so fast, yet it felt like the culmination of months, maybe years, of slow erosion I hadn't fully seen. The quiet wasn't peaceful. It was loud, amplifying the turmoil inside me. My gaze drifted towards the staircase. Upstairs, our son and daughter slept, unaware that the world they knew had fractured while they dreamt. Tomorrow morning, they would wake up expecting breakfast, complaining about homework, living their normal lives. How could I face them? What would I say when they asked where Mom was? The lie felt thick and suffocating in my throat already. Could I pretend? For how long? The weight of that single, inevitable morning conversation pressed down on me, heavier than the betrayal itself. Protecting them felt like an impossible task. Their innocent questions, their faces looking up at me for answers I didn't have. It was unthinkable. I ran a hand over my face, the exhaustion hitting me like a physical force. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness and the sharp edges of pain. The house felt like a mausoleum, filled with the ghosts of a life that no longer existed. Every object held a memory, now warped and distorted. I walked slowly towards the stairs, my feet leaden. Each step felt like an ascent towards an unavoidable precipice. Morning wasn't far off. The first rays of light would creep through the windows soon, bringing with them the inevitable questions, the dawning reality. I reached the top of the stairs, the hallway stretching dimly before me towards their closed bedroom doors. The silence from behind those doors felt profound, sacred almost, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. I stood there, frozen, listening to the absolute quiet, the sheer weight of the coming dawn.